This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Media Derby. We've got a very special interview today with a friend of ours, Lawrence Locke. How you doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, all good. Morning.
So, the purpose of the interview obviously is September is East and Southeast Asian Heritage Month in the UK. Obviously, Lawrence is of East and Southeast Asian heritage. He also works for the FA as National Coach Development Lead in the D&I space. So we thought it'd be great to have a chat with you. We've obviously worked on stuff over the last couple of years anyway, Lawrence, but I thought it'd be good to get you on, chat a little bit about the work you're doing at the FA and in grassroots football and all different areas of football. And yeah, look forward to what you're doing in the rest of the year now that obviously EC Heritage Month is almost over. But first, Loz, could you just give us a little bit of background, like kind of what you do, how you got into your role, and kind of why you wanted to do it in the first place?
Yeah. My name's Lawrence Locke. I'm the National Coach Development Lead for D&I at the FA. So my role is focusing on coach development in the grassroots space, but also trying to engage, ethnically diverse communities to get into football via coaching. So I lead a team of 8 regional coach developers who go into a variety of communities to engage people into coaching for the first time, coaching football, or working with coaches who see football as a profession and seeing it as a full-time job, and working with them to support, mentor, guide, and discover kind of their talents and how we can support them into their coaching journeys. I've been at the FA now for 8 years in a variety of roles. So started out in 2015 as a PE officer, so working with teachers and coaches in schools, and then worked as a regional coach development officer. And then I moved into a national role probably about 15 months ago. Prior to that, so obviously I'm from the north, town just outside Preston, so near Manchester. So I am a Man United fan. Like probably a lot of people from Hong Kong. So my family's from Hong Kong. They moved over. Well, my granddad moved over first, then my mum, then my gran, and we had Chinese takeaways. So I remember at 10, working in the Chinese takeaway. So either serving customers at 10. I don't know if it was all right back then, but it seemed like the normal thing to do. Behind the counter, doing my homework. And then I remember weekends I'd be working, so either making chips or doing the fried rice or taking orders out. So that was kind of like my first thing that I did. And then football was always something that was part of me. So I remember in the shop at 5:00, we'd have the scores coming on. So do you remember at the time they'd have the scores at full time on a Saturday, and still remember they'd go through Manchester United 2, Arsenal 1. They'd say stuff like that. Not that it happened a lot. So I just remember that, and I used to be obsessed with the scores and fixtures and different teams. And I never went to a football game until I was about 15, 16. I went to watch Preston North End for the first time with school. And then I remember going to watch Man United reserves against Preston at Deepdale. We got a load of tickets through school, and that was kind of the first time I got into football. And I remember one of the things, if I did my jobs, I was able to go and play football. So we didn't play any organised football. It was all unaffiliated by the side of the shop, and we'd just have our own pitch. There was no lines. It was just on the car park at the side, and if cars came in, we'd like move out of the way, or if cars were parked in the shop, we'd use them as like things to move around and maneuver around. So it was all informal play. When I got to like 16, I left school, went to college, and it was probably back then, it was like culturally, like it was very go and be a doctor, go and be a banker, go and work in, go and be a lawyer, go and be a dentist. It was very like, that was like the traditional route. But I went and did sport. So went outside the box and went and did sports at college, and then went to university, did sports science. And then when I finished uni and during the summers, I'd go out to America coaching football. And that's when I started doing my coaching badges. And then kind of continued doing them. And then I thought, I want to work in football. And how I do that, I don't know. There was no kind of support back then, which is kind of where the team that I work in, the team that I look after, we've got support mechanisms now for people that want to, go and work in the game. So it was a long, tough journey, working part-time jobs, doing holiday camps, doing after-school clubs, volunteering in different settings, and just really learning my coaching craft, learning how to work with children, how to work with different abilities, working in different communities. And then one of the best things I did was going out to America. So I went out to America for 4 years after uni, where I just coached. I went out as a football coach and just coached football every night, every day. And it's probably the best experience that I did. One, to get out of England, get out of Preston and learn about different things. I think the furthest I went when I lived in Preston was to Manchester. That was as far as I went, and I never knew anything outside of Manchester. So when I went to uni in Leeds, I was like, oh wow, this is mad. This is just crazy. And then I remember going to London for the first time. I was like, oh, this is really crazy. I remember getting a mega bus down with my friend, 18 at the time. We got a bus down at like 5 o'clock to go to the American embassy to get our visas. And I just saw like so much diversity, which I was probably unaware of living in Preston. And it just got me to go, actually, I want to use football as a vehicle, sport as a vehicle to let me travel the world. So when I went to America, I was able to go and work in, so many different towns, cities, states, all down the West Coast, East Coast. And it was just one of the best experiences I ever did. And then when I came back, I was like, I went as a teacher. So I was teaching PE for about 4 years and doing part-time coaching at a boys' academy. And that's when an opportunity at the FA came up. So I did a part-time role for the FA, and then I went full-time in 2015. So yeah, it's been about, someone asked me the other day, like, how long's your career taken you? And I don't think it's finished. I'm still relatively young. I'd say I'm young. But I think it's been 20 years, 22 years nearly of coaching, working in different environments, still learning, still, developing. And yeah, this is where I am today. So I think the work that I do now really helps shine a light on the diverse communities that we've got in England, and using football as a platform and a vehicle to inspire the next generation to whether play football, work in football, coach football, administer it in football. So we started to get a lot of, younger kids, like Generation Z, are they? That want to go and work in football, but aren't sure where to go. And I think even with those cultural jobs, I say the cultural jobs, like the ones that your auntie thinks, oh, you should be a banker, but how can you still work in finance but work in football? So how can you go and work in a big club in England or abroad, but use your banking skills or your accounting skills, which historically it was like the thing that you had to do when you went into like education, or if you're a doctor, like how can you still be a doctor but go and work in sport, not just in football but in other sports? So yeah, my role and the team that I look after are there to diversify the coaching workforce, and yeah, whether it be through coaching, through playing, through different areas into the game. I think there's a lot more opportunity now, and if we can open those doors and give people a vehicle to get through those doors, then that's where my team are there to help.
Honestly, man, it's such a great story. I've heard you, like, I've heard snippets of that story on I think you did an event with Alan Lau from the Frank Sue Foundation. I don't think it was last year. It may have been the year before. For the first EC Heritage Month, where you kind of talked a little bit about your story, and I just find it really interesting because obviously lots of different parts of that story I think will resonate with different people, won't it? Because you've obviously got the takeaway kid story, which you obviously see so many young like Asian kids have that story. Like it's the route that a lot of people took when our parents and our grandparents' generation came to the country, but also the football stuff. Because I'll be honest with you, and Johns will probably echo these things. Even growing up in London, or like the outskirts of London, if you want to be very technical about it, there wasn't a lot of Asian Chinese kids like that we would see when we'd go and play Sunday league football, or when we'd get involved in football, whether it was playing or coach, definitely not coaching. So it's interesting that that's kind of still something that we have in common, even if you grew up north and there was less diversity and stuff like that. It somehow, I think, our community hasn't really been very encouraging of getting involved in like sport, more than like you said it, like a little bit of a reward. If you've done all your necessary work, then you could go out and piss around and kick the football a bit, ball around a little bit as kind of like a little present to you. But yeah, one thing I will ask, because it sounds like you guys are like your team and you doing a lot of trailblazing at the FA to create these pathways. Do you think if this pathway was available to you when you were on your like beginning of your journey, it would have taken you the same amount of time to get where you are? Or do you think it would have obviously shortened that time span? Because I'm just thinking like there's always the age old adage that if you're from an ethnic background, you have to work twice as hard, twice as long to get to certain positions. But do you think that would have been the case with you, even if the pathways were available?
I think everything happens for a reason, and with this year's theme around roots, and it's everyone's got a different route, everyone's got a different path. I think everything happens for a reason. I remember when I was in America, one of the things was that they wanted me to stay, but to apply for a visa, I remember at the time we went to see a immigration lawyer with the club that I was working at, and I just didn't have the necessary qualifications at the time to take a job out there. So that then made me come back to England, do my masters, do my UEFA B coaching award, and then I was in my head, I was like, I'll do that, I'll spend the next 18 months doing that, and then once that's complete, I'll go back to America. But in those 18 months, I got a job part-time at the FA. I got a part-time job at Bradford City Football Club. So it got me that experience in professional football. I think if you'd have asked me that as a 16-year-old kid leaving Preston to go to college and then going back on weekends to help at the shop, I'd have gone, no chance. So I think, I call them blocks in life that you've got to get around, and how you get around them is it's got to be guided by the person themselves. And, it's about finding people that can help along the way. So I remember, I met one of the, someone that I still speak to all the time, and I met him on a course, and, he was someone that I could speak to around going for a job or, learning my coaching craft. So I'd have someone to reflect with. And I think that's where my team can come in. And I don't think you can't fast track people in development, I don't think. So it's all about, the work that people put in. So, I remember I'd finish work and I'd go and volunteer. I'd finish work, I'd go to university and finish my masters. So there were times where my friends were going out doing, they'd go, oh, we're going to go and play football on Saturday. Do you want to, we need another player. Can you play? And I'll be like, I can't, I need to go to uni. Or on a Sunday, someone will message and go, oh, we're going to go. And I remember like one of the times my friend was like, oh, we're going to go and watch his brother. He was in Formula 4 or something. He was like, oh, we're going to go down to Silverstone to watch him race. And I've got a game. I can't go. I can't just leave the players. And this was when I was volunteering, so I wasn't even getting paid for it. And I think the other one is having, a really strong network behind you. So, my wife now, she was my girlfriend at the time. She was the amount of times I missed events for certain things. So I think that one of the first times I met my in-laws now, they booked a weekend away. It was during the season, and I was like, I can't go to this weekend away because I've got a game and she was like, what do you mean? Like, it's a weekend. I was like, yeah, but I've got a commitment. So I think there's times where in life, in any profession, you've got to sacrifice, and sometimes you've got to sacrifice your friends, your family, and it's hard to put either or be in front, but long as you can justify it and understand the long-term benefits of it. So, I remember there was two family, I still talk to my wife about it. Do you remember that time when I didn't go on the barge, or the time where I didn't go to that cottage out somewhere in the countryside? And there was one where we went on a barge and I ended up going to a game, and we ended up playing this game, and I met a group of people from the other team. I was like, oh, you really good guys, and still chat to them now. And then the other one was, we were meant to go away for a weekend, and there was a course that came up, and it was around how to become a developer. So how do you become a coach developer? And there was this course, and it was like the only one that I could do. And I ended up doing that course over going away on holiday. But then what happened was I did that course, and 6 months later, a part-time role came up. And I applied for that part-time role. And because I'd done the course, it helped me, get ready for the interview, understand like learning principles, understood, the FA a little bit more, and it helped me in the long term. And then 12 months later, I went full-time. So it's little things like that you go, our roots, our belonging is around like the things that happen prior, which you don't think about. And then when you reflect, and I always try to reflect, and when you reflect back on the little moments in life, I think, well, that happened for a reason, because of this has happened. So it's that domino effect that, if I didn't do that course, I wouldn't have met the people on that course, which potentially could have not opened doors, but it got my name out there. And I remember going on that course, someone said to me, like, go as a job interview, like really shine a light on you. And, I remember being the only Chinese person, the only person of ethnicity on that course. So I was like, I've got to make sure that my voice is heard. So it's having, our cultural identity around, I'm quite chilled, quite reserved. But I remember like going on that course, I was like, I need to make sure I stand out. So when it comes to speaking, when it comes to presenting, I was like, I need to be in front, because if I go and just sit back, then people aren't going to recognise you. So yeah, I think that's probably culturally, we're quite chilled out, but I had to think of a different way to behave, and not be that one to be the loudest, but just to go, when I talk, I want to be heard, and I want them to remember what I say. So I think they're the little things that happen that I think as coaches, as people trying to get into the profession, is that, be humble, but then have visibility with credibility. And I think they're the things that, I try and instill in the people that I work with, who are trying to break into the game.
Yeah, no, I think they're all really good points, because I think obviously there's a lot of conversation about how some people do get fast track, but I think you make a really good point. Like, people develop at different rates. People, are ready for the next stage at different times. Some people can take years, some people can take months. Everyone's different. And like you said, everyone has their own unique kind of route towards like their end game, or the success that they're looking to achieve. And I think it's a good point, because I think some people might find it kind of unconventional. I guess there are a lot of people that might just like go through that like linear cycle to get to where they want to get to. But I think things like taking yourself out of your hometown, your home country, doing a variety of different jobs, even if they're all kind of connected to football in some way, I think it still helps you, because then it puts you in a position where you're able to make those decisions that you did, and seize the opportunities when you get them. And I was going to ask you whether there are any key moments or factors in your career that kind of have helped you get to where you are, but you kind of answered that already with those two stories about sacrificing moments. And I think it's a good shout out for your wife right now, because it takes a really understanding partner and family to be able to like not somehow get angry when that happens the first, second or third time. Like it's inevitable, but as long as you guys kind of have that support system. I think that's key. And I want to ask you a question around your family, because you mentioned they were talking about, maybe not using football as like a proper career path at the beginning, or kind of making you do other things before you can do football. Are they bought in now to Lawrence Locke, the FA National Coach Development Lead? Are they like proper behind football as a career, or do you still get some skepticism?
No, I think like my mum's always been like, just do what you want. It was probably more the comments. I remember, you go to like Hong Kong, or you'd go to like family events, and you know what the aunties are like. They'll talk and, oh, my son's doing this, my son's doing that, and then
bloody aunties,
he or she's got this, and the uncles start talking, and you're like, I think probably trust, and again, like, there's no right or wrong way. Like I said, everyone's got a different path, but I think they've always been supportive of what I do. When I said I was going to go and do sport, no one kind of challenged it. It was kind of like, we accept what you want to do, which is, I think that's important with it. I've got children on my own. I've got two little kids, and if they say what they want to do something, I'll always support them. And I think as parents, we've got to support and guide and help. Obviously, when Dexter comes in and goes, I want to play on the iPad and watch TV for 3 hours, then you'd probably challenge that. But if he comes home and goes, oh, Daddy, I want to try and play rugby now, I'd go, yeah, let's go and play rugby, or I want to play cricket, or I don't like football anymore, I want to do this. So I think we've got to allow children, or anyone, like wives, partners, husbands, to spark that curiosity. So sport was always a curiosity for me. Football, I always loved playing it, and I kind of fell into football. But I think it's changing, because you see more role models now in the game. I think the influx of East and Southeast Asian owners in the Premier League, the players in the Premier League, it's probably changing that narrative. We're not there yet. When I go into meetings in the football field, I'm probably the only Chinese person, a Southeast Asian person in meetings across the game. We're starting to see it more. So we are trying to diversify that workforce. And, even recently, like there's a coach called Wei Wan, who she's just got a job down in Southampton in the boys' academy. So, it's not just me that's trying to break these barriers. Alan Lau, who we just spoke about, he works part-time for us at the FA. So we're starting to see a crop of coaches, people working in the game. And I think we've got to do more. And I think the more we see, the more we can highlight and role model, then, the aunties and uncles in the past will probably go, oh, actually, it's not bad that. Look, you can get far in your field, but it just isn't in the traditional field of, you can be a doctor, but you can go and do it anywhere in the world. And Alicia Tang, who's our physio for the Lionesses, she's breaking barriers, like as a Asian female, East and Southeast Asian female. So we've got to try and shine a light on role models, because that will inspire the next generation to go, I'm going to go and be a physio, but actually I'm going to go and do it in the sporting context.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, man, because I can understand why people look at it and just kind of just get exacerbated and like, oh, we're not making progress, or we're not seeing enough people. But it is a bit of a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? Because like, we need the support of our community, of our elders, of different people within the community. But kind of the only way to get that or change their perception is to show them more examples. So, and you kind of need that support to create more examples. So it ends up being just a bit of a difficult cycle to break. But there are people, like you said, you've named all of them really, that I know anyway, that are doing great stuff, and they're from East and Southeast Asian backgrounds. So yeah, you kind of need them, and just hope that they kind of inspire the next generation. And the work that you're doing obviously makes a huge impact, and having you there as a very visible person doing that work, I think will help as well. And then, yeah, hopefully you'll see that all of these different areas inspire each other. Like, obviously Jonty wasn't very happy about the result on Sunday, but at the same time we were watching it and we had to say, you have to give it up to Son. He's an unbelievable player, and seeing other East and Southeast Asian kids, seeing him play, and he's got. By the time he retires, I don't think it's a crazy shout to say he'll be, a Premier League legend. He might not be, on the top goal scoring charts with the Henrys and the Shearers and stuff. But I think if you ever mention Son in 10, 15 years, I think people will have, a similar kind of fondness that they do to the guy over my shoulder, and he will have a real big impact on both men's and women's football. But I guess we kind of haven't really talked about too much around the work that you've done or will be doing around EC Heritage Month. But I know we've done a lot of stuff together. But do you want to call out any projects? I know there's one from last year that we can maybe talk a little bit about. But have you been doing anything else since last year leading up to this to kind of specifically highlight or develop that kind of East and Southeast Asian community?
Yeah, it's probably, working with Alan. I know he does a lot of work with Watford, so massive shout out to Watford, who, they're such a vibrant club that just have their arms open all the time. So, we've, off the back of last year's event, we've continued to run the football sessions for the young children. I think I remember just in the summer, like the volunteers who 2 years ago when we started off on this project, where we had, I remember still going down to that event. I'll say the event, we went down to Watford Football Club to the training ground, and bag of football, some bibs, some cones, and a group of kids just turned up. And there was me and my colleague, Joe Williams, who worked for me at the time. And we were like, what we're going to do? I think we had about 50 kids. All the parents came, dropped the kids off, and was like, see ya. And we're like, all right, what we're going to do. So we ended up doing a session and then spoke to some of the parents and say, look, can you get involved? And some of them got involved. So some of them stepped over the sidelines. We run stepping over the sideline workshops across the country to engage females, but also engage coaches from ethnically diverse backgrounds to take that step into coaching. So those parents 2 years ago were like, no, this is not for me. And then, I was loving it. I went to this tournament that was run by the Frank Sue Foundation. It was, I can't remember where it was. It's somewhere in London. I still don't know London that well. It was, where was it? I can't remember. Hendon Town. So again,
Hendon, of course,
Hendon, yeah. So we got there, and there was this adults tournament. So there was a team of adults playing. I think there was about 7, 8 teams across the pitch, and then all the volunteers were there running the event. So 2 years on, they're running a male adults tournament. There was a kids mini competition between 2 of the Chinese schools from, I think one was Harrow, one was Watford, I think. But all the kids go to the sessions on a Sunday. And they ran like a mini festival during the tournament. And I'm like, if you said this 2 years ago, you got no chance. We had probably about 40 kids turn up, played matches. And even the workshops that Alan put on, there was 4 workshops around a variety of things, which is really important. So how do we use football to bring people there? But then how do we teach about a variety of cultural subjects? And then even to the thing like the food on the day, it wasn't your typical peas, pies, gravy. It was, what was her name? Aunt Mary. She did these chicken satay sticks, and they were the best chicken satays ever. And I love food, and that was just, when it wraps it all up, when you go there and the food is what you're used to growing up eating, and it's surrounded by people from your ethnicity, and you're seeing a lot of diversity. So you've got people from different parts of London coming together. And then I thought that event was born from other events. And when it all came together, it's like when you saw some of the coaches working with the kids now, they've gone from running these fun sessions to again coaching on the sideline. It's a massive, massive, achievement for the Frank Sue Foundation. And, all I've done is, be there to add value. So it's all run by the volunteers. They get support from, different organisations, and it's around that collaboration. And yeah, that was a massive thing. And the sessions continue now. So I was there with them last month on 2 weeks ago. And again, the sessions were run by the volunteers, and they're all parents. So they've gone from dropping the kids off and, watching from the side to stepping over the sideline, running sessions. I'm there just to add value and give them some guidance on the day. And we, that's our role. And that's not just one project. We run similar projects like that across the country. And then as we move into this season, obviously we've got Black History Month. So across the country, we'll run a variety of events across the country. And then there'll be a conference at the end of Black History Month up at St George's Park. And then just other key dates. So we've got obviously Lunar New Year coming up in Feb. So again, massive month for me personally, but also it's a big month for us at the FA around celebrating that month. And then, other events such as, International Day of Racial Discrimination, International Disability Day, Rainbow Laces, International Women's Day. So what we try and do as a team, we try and support across different initiatives across the month. And I think that's really important that, we don't just work down one route. Football, we've got 140,000 players across grassroots, that we've got, different communities across the country that we need to go and work with. And that's our team, that's our job. So we'll also do something for Ramadan, something for Diwali, for Zach Day. We did an event last year over in Swindon. So, we try and work across different faiths because we need to make football inclusive. So, someone going to watch a game on a Sunday or on a Saturday, they feel that inclusive environment for them. No,
that sounds amazing, man. Because because I think we didn't really cover it, but the event we did last year, the Football Made Easy event that we did at Watford, so another shout out for Watford, was around highlighting obviously EC representation in football. Lawrence was part of the panel. Alicia Tang, who you mentioned earlier, was part of that panel. Alan Now obviously was part of that panel as well, and Josh Sim, the journalist at Sports Pro, hosted it. And it was a great event because I think that was one of the first times I personally had seen the community come out, because there were a lot of East and Southeast Asian people that showed up to that, a lot of allies from other communities as well, and it was really good to see that kind of outpouring of support. And I think a lot of people were really inspired by you guys. So I think even that event you're talking about at Hendon, I remember Alan after the event was talking to me about it. So it's really, really good to hear that kind of that work has continued and intensified after that event last year. And obviously with your role, I think you're downplaying it a little bit by saying you're there just to support and lend a hand. I think you add a lot of credibility to that, because obviously if you're not there, then it's very easy for people to just gloss over these events and say that they're little kind of small community events that are going on and not picking up momentum. But you go in there and supporting and kind of making sure you're that connector between the FA and those kind of community organisations helps a lot. And like I said, adds a lot of credibility to them. So I think the last question we'll do before we'll go to the special segment that we do with all of our guests is around your goals, I guess, because it's quite clear that you've got loads of things going on, and I think the ultimate goal is quite obvious, but do you have any specific goals that you're looking to try and achieve with all the work that you're trying to do? Are you looking to try and get a X amount of coaches or people from the EC community or different communities in football? How do you quantify your success? How do you turn around to say to people it's working?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I've stole this from someone. So we get given KPIs, but behind every KPI is a number. Stole this from a really good colleague of mine called Butch. Tells me this all the time. So behind every KPI there's a number. Behind every number there's a name, and then behind every name there's a narrative. So for me, and I love that quote from Butch because it gets me to think we can't just get everyone a number. So we get numbers that we need to hit. And for me, it's about the storytelling behind the name. So, if we work with a coach, what is their story and how do we shine a light on that story? Because, for me, stories inspire, stories can change lives. So if we can tell as many stories as we can, either through social media or through the reports that we do, and just I think that will go and inspire people to go and take that next step. Now, we can't create jobs for people, we can't give people jobs, but we can put them in a really good place. So we can get people to the door, we can help them through the door, but then as soon as they're through that door, they've got to then get into the levels that they want. So the analogy I use is aeroplanes with the coaches that we work with. So when you're driving an aeroplane, I say driving, when you're flying an aeroplane, for the coaches that we work with, if you're flying an aeroplane, it goes a degrees off, you can end up, if you're going to New York and you're 2 degrees off, I think I read you end up in Florida. So if you look at that for a coach or someone's journey, like, we've got to keep them on that path that they want. Now, obviously, people will veer off based on circumstances, but if we can help them back onto their route that they want, then that's my job to help people in the communities that want to see football as a career for them. And I think it's then for us to really shine a light on the work that we do and, break those barriers and don't be afraid of it. So I think, again, I'm quite mellow and I'm quite chilled in what I do. And I think me personally, as a goal, I've got to probably shine a light more on like the work that I do and the team that I work with do. So that's a goal for me, is like, how do we share the work that we do? So that event at Hendon, like, how many people knew about it? Probably a small community. So how do we then convert people to go, actually, look at what we're doing, how do we then replicate that in your community? So for me, it's about celebrating success, but then also how do we learn from that to then pass that on? So how can we replicate that in it? Not replicate, but how can we learn from one event and then pass it on to another community? Then, the big one is then how do we then share that across Europe? How do we share that across the world? And then how do we make D&I across everything that we do? But then how do we get other nations to then, go, actually, that's really important because, we're doing something as a country, as England, but then how do we work with other countries to go, look what we're doing? How might you replicate, or how might you take learnings from this and use in your country? So for me, I think we've probably put a few ripples in the water, but then how do we then encourage other countries, other communities, other organisations to ripple and throw that pebble in their ocean as well?
Yeah, no, that's amazing actually, to think about it, how like you said, something from essentially grassroots can end up, the goal is to try and take the learnings from that and the work you're doing and to amplify it as much as you can, beyond just even the country. Because I think looking at football globally, everyone's at, and me and Jonty have had this conversation before, everyone's at different stages of their development, like you talked about, on their journey, to try and get to kind of, the best place around kind of their professional game, but also the grassroots game. And so I guess if you're able to, and England's in a very privileged position because we have all of these diverse communities, we have all of these diverse faith groups and all of these different enclaves, pockets of people. If we're able to nail it, then yeah, there's no excuses why other countries won't be able to do similar or, develop that learning as well. But let's move on to the next segment. John, so I just wanted to loop you in. I don't know if you had any other questions as well, or we go straight to the favorite Asian player.
I had one question really, which kind of off the cuff sparked from when you spoke about going to America. And I just wanted to ask, kind of, obviously living in England, knowing the football culture in England most, I can have an opinion on what we do well and what we don't do well and that kind of stuff. But when you went over to America and you were coaching in America for those 4 years, did you see any differences between kind of that coaching level in terms of either diversity or just in terms of mindset that you like kind of brought back with you?
Yeah, good question. It was really interesting when I went to America for the first time because it was so organised. So I grew up playing on the street, like I said, it was unorganised. You'd turn up with a ball and whoever was there would join in. And I still see it now. I take Dexter to the
jumpers
park.
for goalposts. Right?
Yeah. It's a bit nicer now. There's actually like cages that kids can go and play in, and there's actually goals. But, and I think that probably society was like, you'd just turn up and then whoever's there, you'd play. You'd have 8-year-olds playing with 12-year-olds, and if you're good enough, you'd go and play with the 16-year-olds. And you see it at school now. Dexter will come back. Oh, I was playing with the year twos today, and I think that's really important in terms of how do we develop more skillful players. It's like we've got to challenge them and get them to play in environments that are mixed, playing with girls, playing with boys. I think that's really important. But I think what I learned when I went to America, everything was so organised. So I remember we used to stay with host families, and I'd say to the kids oh, what do you do for soccer? And they'd be like, oh, we only train and only play with the teams that we're allocated to. So I was like, oh, do you not do anything that's informal? And speaking to the parents, no, it's all organised. And that was probably a big thing, because here, you go down the street and you'd see kids playing football, probably not as much now as society's changed, but that was a big thing. It was so organised. And then what also was a massive thing was the amount of travel that they did for grassroots of football. So I worked in a club in Utah, in Salt Lake City, where it was a big, soccer was their main sport. But some of the travel that we did for under 10s, I remember we did a game. It was like a league game after school. So the kids had an evening game after school, and it was an 80-mile drive for a game. And I was like, why were you going that far to play a match? And we had it took us 2.5 hours to get up there to this game because of traffic. And they're the things that because it's so big and parents are happy to travel. And even some of the tournaments, we went to an under 11 tournament, and it was just outside Vegas. It was like a 6-hour drive to a tournament for a weekend. And we had teams flying from California to this tournament, and it was just mad. And probably it's changed a lot now. I've still got friends that live out there, and I think the academy system back then there wasn't a academy system for the players that were that played at a higher standard to get spotted. So in the past it was you play club football, then you go to college, you get drafted in the MLS, whereas now a lot of the MLS clubs will have academies. So they're starting to bring kids in a younger. So I think there's routes now where they go from academy into the MLS, and they can still get drafted. And then just one of the things that I did, they call it pickup football over there. So we used to play pickup, and I used to run and again, a lot of the kids that I worked with were Mormon. So a lot of them went to church on a Sunday. So one of the things I said to the club, I was like, you've got 80% of your kids are Mormon, so they don't do any sport on a Sunday because of their religious beliefs. So they go to church and they spend time with family on a Sunday. But then I said, I'm not Mormon, and you've got a group of kids that are not Mormon. So what can we do to engage them? And again, it was kind of unorganized but organized. So I ran a Sunday turn up and play session for the kids that were not at church, and we started off with probably 10 kids, and then over that probably 3 or 4 months we grew it to about 50, 60 kids every Sunday. And one of the best things was that we had a few Utah Jazz players that used to live on the hill where we used to do the sessions. They used to bring their kids down, so they were like, oh, we didn't know about this. And because they were traveling, and I think that their kids play for different clubs, but like, oh, our club doesn't do this. So it's great that we started to bring other kids in. So it was kind of unorganized but organized for them. It felt organised for the parents because they could come drop the kids off, and I'd just put them in matches, and whoever came, be like, right, you go on this team, you go on this team. There was no ability mix. It was just mixed age groups. Girls played with boys, and it was just that informal play that probably I craved, and we managed to get that for the kids, and they used to love that because there was no coaching involved. They'd just turn up, have matches. We'd have tournaments every Sunday. They'd come, mix the teams up, and I think it gave kids that sense of like relief of, oh, what do we do? Because there's no organised sport on a Sunday in Utah. So here it is, something for you that's not organised, but, you know, to the outside world, it looks organised. But yeah, it was organised chaos.
Yeah. I suppose that's what really kind of, if I think about it, whenever I played more organised football, there was always like that aspect of pressure.
Yeah.
So, you know, even if it was a Sunday league side, right, like getting into the team, wanting to perform, et cetera, you kind of took it very seriously. And maybe like the passion for football actually came from kicking about in a car park, just as you say, right, where they've got the like metal bar that basically makes the goal.
Yeah.
And having to climb under cars to get the ball back and all of that kind of stuff is what really kind of maybe built up the passion for football. So it's great to be able to have some of that informal play alongside the more organised football, you know, to test some of those skills you develop. So I definitely agree that both are necessary.
Yeah, I think that's where I've probably changed as a coach. Whereas, you know, for me, it's about, are the kids there to have fun? Do they come back? When they get dropped off, are they running to your session? And if they are, then you're doing something right. If you've got kids that are kicking off, going, I don't want to go, then for me, then it's like, well, what do you need to do as a coach to make sure the kids are coming out to you? So if you're there as a coach and you're coaching an under-10 team and you're shouting at them because they got beat 1-0 on, well, they lost a game, and you're telling them off, or you one that go, actually, you got beat 1-0, but you had 12 shots this week. Last week you had 2 shots. I think that's where kids will want to come back, and we need to keep kids engaged because of the dropout at 15, 16. You know, how do we keep those kids engaged? So how do we have, you know, unaffiliated football? How do we put on events where kids can go and play? And there's loads of organisations around the country that put on, especially the Kicks programme that the Premier League run. I wish there was a Kicks programme when I was younger. That's probably what I would have done every Friday after.
I remember,
you know,
when they used to come to my school.
Yeah. So the Kicks programme, like, you know, if they had that when I was younger, it would have been brilliant. Would have got my jobs done straight away, and I've been right. I'm going to Kicks, but yeah, when I got to 14, I had to do the tills. Then it would have been different. But even little things like that, where clubs will go into the community, so kids don't have to travel. That's really important. That informal side of football.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I think me and John's, like, our entry into different sports, a lot of it was because of, you know, the equivalent of a Kicks program, people coming into the schools and encouraging us to get involved, and removing that barrier of travel to get to a certain place to do it. So, yeah, I can see how that would really, you know, help encourage participation. Yeah. But let's get to the very special segment then, Loz. Obviously, you know, we like to focus on, not only for EC Heritage Month, but just generally whenever we have a guest in, we'll always ask them the same question. And that's around East and Southeast Asian football players. So the question is, who is your favourite Asian football player of all time?
All time, Park Ji-sung. Just
he's biased you with the picture in the background.
No. He's probably a bias because I'm a United fan, but I remember watching him. I remember watching him for the first time. I was like, oh wow, he looks like me. Like, oh wow, he plays centre midfield. He go again like that. I got asked it the other day, and I thought he's just so relaxed. He's not the one in the limelight. He does the job, and if you look at, I obviously don't know him, but like you look at the interviews that people talk about, he just gets on with the job, and it's probably the cultural side of just give me a job to do. I'll do it as well as I can. I'm not going to complain about it, and you know, I'm not there to be in the limelight, and I'll let others take the limelight. And I think just his work rate, and I think he was a really good player as well. Like some of the goals when he was at PSV, even when he was at PSV, I was like, he's really good. So yeah, he was probably one growing up that I was like, oh, he's decent. And then probably going to go on a tangent, but like Nakamura, that free kick that he scored when he was at Celtic, I was there at that game, and I was like, no, who's this guy? Like that free kick. And I remember like going back to school the next day, like just doing free kicks. But I think now I love Son. Like I just love watching him play, and just he smiles all the time, doesn't he? Like, just love his just love Son. Like, even as a United fan, I think like Son's just, I love him at United. Like, that's one that I think, if he came to United, he'd be brilliant. And probably in the past couple of seasons, Matoma at Brighton. Just like watching, I've never seen him live, but watched him live last year at the semi-final, and I thought, wow, you're different. Like the way you move, the way you attack 1v1. So yeah, that's probably where the game's changed a little bit. Like, where you had a Pardew son who was work rate, win the ball back, give it to someone. Whereas it's now, if you look at how it's shifted now, like East and Southeast Asian players, they are creative players? Are they the ones that you want to get on the ball? Because, you look at Chan at Wolves, he's scored a couple of goals in the Premier League. Matoma scored 2 at the weekend. So, you look at the creativity that those guys have got, and Son himself. Like, I think that's really something around like how society might see, East and Southeast Asian players.
No, you're right, man. And I think it is about changing the perception, because I remember when I was growing up, you had Hidetoshi Nakata in Italy, who was an absolute baller as well, very techie baller. But like a lot of that generation didn't really come to the Prem. Like, they didn't come over to England. So unless you're watching Channel 4 and watching Football Italia or whatever, you're not seeing some of these guys that were out doing amazing stuff on the continent. And I agree with you, Loz. Like, Nakamura was the eye-opener for me, because he had those elements of hard working. He had, the stereotypical traits that a lot of people kind of use to describe an Asian footballer, but he had like a wand of a left foot. He was really silky, obviously had amazing free kicks. So it was something different. And I think you're right. Now, this generation of Asian football players that we're seeing in the Premier League, and I think definitely Son kind of sparked it. You're seeing quick, clinical, very technical, a different breed of player. Because looking at Matoma and Huang at Wolves, they've got those elements. They work hard, and they sacrifice for the team, but they're also full of flair, skillful players who also are changing that perception of the hard working, quiet, diligent Asian player, which I think is a great thing for people to see different players of different ethnicities in different ways, isn't it? So
I'm also interested in seeing, like, Chelsea. They've just bought Hamano, Chelsea like the women's team, and you look at the influx of Asian female players, Southeast Asian females in the WSL. Again, they're your flair players, your attackers. So, I think, looking at Japan in the Women's World Cup, they were dangerous, like, they were really strong. So I think there will be an influx of, Southeast Asian females coming into the WSL. So, I think it's an exciting time for players. It's then, how do we find that British-born Chinese player after Frank Su to come and play, not just in the Premier League, but in professional football?
Yeah, no, I have no doubt when that time comes, you guys will find them. I have no doubt Alan Lau will find that player. If they exist, he will find them. So thanks a lot, Loz, man. I think we'll wrap up the interview here. It's been like sick to talk with you, man, and understand a bit more about your path and hear about it more, and kind of chat with you about all the great work that you're doing. It's definitely something we'll hope to get you on again. If you guys have like a big event or anything like that, we'll definitely love to have you back on to try and talk more about it. But thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And so we'll wrap up the pod here. So for those of you watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share if you can. Try and engage with it as much as possible. If you follow our TikTok, you'll see we're pretty active with the replies. So if you do comment, we will reply back to you and spark a conversation. And for those of you listening to the podcast on an audio only platform, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music. Please follow and give us a 5-star review. It will obviously really help us get to a wider audience and share great stories like Lawrence's with more people and hopefully grow that community even bigger. But yeah, thanks a lot for coming on, Lawrence, and thanks, Jonts. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.